next story. If you have student loan debt and if you were counting on some type of relief in reference to repayment, you may want to stay tuned for this story. As you know, the Supreme Court basically is the deciding factor here in whether or not they will uphold Biden's proposal to cancel $10,000 of student loan debt and $20,000 of student loan debt for those who had Pell loans or the Pell Grant. Now, I told you when this was first announced that Biden did not do this correctly. He didn't follow instructions. Ayanna Pressley, Chuck Schumer, and Elizabeth Warren all explained how to do this back in February of 2021. And that the instructions that he was supposed to have is that you were supposed to do this through the Higher Education Act of 1965. Joe Biden did not do that. He decided to cancel student debt under the HEROES Act. And that is a problem because the HEROES Act referred to emergency status of the pandemic. When Joe Biden announced that the emergency status of the pandemic was over, you can't really use the HEROES Act for this anymore. It was overturned, obviously. And so we found ourselves in limbo. Well, now there is more information that has been released about this student loan issue, and I think you need to become ready for repayment. Let's get into this story here. It says that Biden administration will resume interest on federal student loans September 1st, monthly payments due in October. So here we go. When exactly will Biden restart the federal student loans? After more than 3 years, the federal government's pandemic-related suspension of student loan payments and interest is officially coming to an end. Student loan interest will resume starting on September 1st, 2023, and payments will be due starting in October. We will notify borrowers well before payments restart. So I'm telling you guys now, this is your notification. Let's go on here. The deal President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy reached to raise the debt ceiling earlier this month cemented into law the termination of the payment pause that's been in place since March 2020. So you remember this whole argument with the debt ceiling? Yeah. While everyone was focused on, is it going to pass? Is it not going to pass? This kind of snuck right in there. Part of the agreement was to end the pause on the student loan payments. But the text of the old deal, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, left borrowers with something of a mathematical word problem on the timing. 60 days after June 30th. The law says the suspension of student loan payments and interest shall cease to be effective. The language somewhat mirrors the administration's previously announced policy of resuming payments 60 days after either the Supreme Court rules on its sweeping student debt cancellation program or June 30th, whichever comes first. The provision has sparked some confusion over precisely when borrowers would face interest charges and student loan bills. A range of lawmakers and press reports have described the policy as ending the payment pause on slightly different days. The difference of a few days when it comes to interest accrual on the massive federal student loan portfolio amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars for borrowers. The Education Department has estimated that the pause saves borrowers approximately $5 billion in interest each month. So that's roughly $167 million of interest that typically accrues each day. The Biden administration confirmation that interest will now resume September 1st and payments in October is consistent with what Politico previously reported the administration had been planning before the debt ceiling deal. Looming over the restart of payments is whether the Supreme Court will in coming weeks allow the Biden administration to move forward with its plan to cancel up to $10,000 or $20,000 of debt for tens of millions of borrowers. Many progressives blasted the administration's agreement with Republicans to codify the end of the payment pause into the debt ceiling deal. They're worried that the administration has locked itself into restarting payments regardless of whether tens of millions will receive debt relief after the Supreme Court's ruling. This was not smart because we still don't know if the Supreme Court is going to uphold President Biden's student debt cancellation. We don't know. So what happens if they don't uphold it, which is possible? It is a conservative Supreme Court for the most part. Now you have the interest coming back. Now you have these repayments coming back. And this is not a winning strategy for the Democratic Party. I feel like the entire way that this was done, I feel like it was messy. I feel like it was sloppy. And I feel like it was unorganized. Damn it. How else to say it? It was unorganized. This was not done the right way. And now you had all of these Gen Z voters come out to support Democrat candidates in the midterms in November, mainly because of two reasons: student loan debt cancellation and Roe v. Wade being overturned. Roe v. Wade has not been codified into law. And now we don't know what's going to happen with the student debt cancellation, and the repayment will start again this year. So once again, the American people, particularly Gen Z, who helped Democrats win in the midterms, they're disappointed once again. And I don't know how else to put it to you other than the fact that these two parties will continue to disappoint you because they don't work for us. They're supposed to work for us, but they don't. They pass legislation for the most part that has some type of corporate interest. Canceling student loan debt does not have corporate interest. So you have to understand, this is going to make a lot of people angry. And I know some people don't agree with canceling this at all, but this is going to make a lot of people angry, especially those who came out to support Democrats in November. And I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that Cornel West is a spoiler candidate, that RFK Jr., Marianne, all these people are spoiler candidates, and that's why, Democrats didn't win come 2024. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any of this, because the thing is this: if Joe Biden had fulfilled these promises that he ran on, if he would have done this correctly, then maybe he could get a pass at winning again in 2024. But I don't see it. I don't see it. And what was really interesting to me is that even the NAACP, they fell for this too. Boy, I tell you, NAACP says it is disappointed. I don't know why that's there. It is disappointed Biden ended pause on federal student loan payments. They're disappointed. Let me read this and then I'm going to tell you something. And I hope people don't take this the wrong way. The NAACP plans to send a letter to President Joe Biden on Tuesday night expressing deep frustration that the White House agreed to end the pause on federal student loan payments as part of the deal with Kevin McCarthy for the debt ceiling crisis. They're going to write a strongly worded letter because that's always worked in the past. The resolution of the debt ceiling crisis is one we wholeheartedly welcomed, and we appreciate all that went into the debt ceiling negotiations. However, we are disappointed that the needs of Black communities have suffered from the negotiated agreement that will erode economic progress for Black Americans. This is coming from Wisdom Cole. He's the NAACP's National Director of Youth and College, and Derek Johnson, the group's president. It is disappointing that narrowing the racial wealth gap was not given a higher priority. Cole and Johnson say, adding that Black borrowers were 50% more likely to have their loans fall into default. NBC News saw an advanced copy of the letter on Tuesday. But I have to say this, what is it going to take for African Americans in this country to realize that the Democratic Party don't care about you, boo. We are not a priority. We are not a corporation. We are not the military industrial complex. We are not a priority. People say things when they want you to vote for them, but under no obligation. They're under no obligation to fulfill what they promised to you. Now, that's a whole different conversation. We can have it another time about whether or not candidates should be held accountable for not fulfilling their campaign promises. Maybe we could do a panel about that. But what else is it going to take for people to just wake up? You know, it's just like, and then the same people are out here on Twitter smearing Cornel West. How dare you run and not run in the Democratic Party? RFK Jr., how dare you run against a sitting Democrat president? Marianne, don't you even think about, why are you running against a Democrat president? Because the American people are not happy. People are not happy. So the NAACP, you know, you can miss me with all of this because you'll say all this. You'll complain you're not happy. You'll complain every year. We're not happy. The Democratic Party's doing this. But at the end of the day, when it comes time election season, you'll tell Black people that they need to support the candidate that's running the Democratic Party for president. NAACP sold out a long time ago. A lot of people, they hear this organization and they think of people like MLK. It's not that same NAACP. They're corporate now. So I don't even want to hear it. This just drove me crazy. Like, really? If you're this frustrated and this upset, then maybe you should not vote in the two-party system coming 2024. Maybe you should vote third party. And stop feeling like you have to do something just because someone continues to tell you they're better for the Black community, when obviously you can look at your material conditions and you can look at policies and you can see that apparently no. Now it goes on to say, Biden has said providing student debt relief is one of his administration's key priorities. He extended a Trump administration policy that allowed federal student loan holders to forego payments without being penalized, and he issued several last-minute extensions. He has also laid out an ambitious plan that would allow eligible borrowers to cancel up to $20,000 in debt. How is that ambitious? You know, they're just throwing around vocabulary. How is that ambitious? Ambitious would be canceling all of it. And it goes on to say here, we'll skip that part. It's not as important. Oh, yeah, this part isn't. But as part of the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, the legislation that resulted from Biden's deal with McCarthy, the president agreed to end the freeze on payments at the end of August. The legislation specifically prevents him from issuing any more extensions and states that the pause shall cease to be effective 60 days after June 30th. Biden signed the bill into law on June 3rd. You see how Joe Biden can do bipartisanship? See how he can just work out this deal with a Republican? But don't you dare go to a march or a rally with one. Don't you talk to your Republican neighbor. Don't you organize with Republicans on a class movement or for workers' rights. Don't you do that. No, no, no. But he can do this anytime. Anytime. It goes on to say here, the president will continue to defend and strengthen his Investing in America agenda, which has resulted in record low Black unemployment. This is not a bragging point until you tell me what those jobs are and how much those jobs are paying, which they never do. The administration announced in November that the student loan payment pause would end in August. This bipartisan budget agreement makes no changes to that plan. So, oops, sorry, my mouse got stuck. So they really believe that writing this letter to Joe Biden is really going to make some type of a difference. Strongly worded letter. But no, it just, and people fall for this again. 2024 come around and they'll say, well, we know that Biden didn't do stuff for us, but it's better than getting the Republicans. So we need to go out and support Joe Biden. And this is why we don't get anything. No other group does this, people. Nobody else does this. Wake up. Wake up. My Latino friends are not voting without concessions. My Asian friends are not voting without concessions. What are you going to do? Let me make something very clear. Yes, the Democratic Party cannot win without the black vote. But do you think that will stay the same? Do you think that will be the case 10, 15 years from now? No. Eventually, they won't need our vote. Wake up, people. Then it'll be too late. By the time most people wake up, it'll be too late. Hot mess. It's a mess. I hate to say it, but I warned you. I was warning people about this. Thank you for the super chat, Colin. Even if SCOTUS allows forgiveness to go through, any forgiveness will go towards the interest first, as Imani Oakley said. That's right. We had a panel on this show about the student loan cancellation. And Imani Oakley actually called in to, I believe it was her lender, and asked them, where would the money go first? To make a long story short. And they told her, this was on speaker, they told her that it would go to the interest first. So if you owe $20,000 of student loans and you qualified for the $10,000 cancellation, you may still owe $20,000 student loans. It depends on how much your interest is. If your interest is like, I don't know, $10,000 or something like that, and you qualify for the $10,000, you still owe $20,000. No one's explaining this except for like Imani and me and Colin that had that panel. Like, people aren't explaining this. Thank you for the super chat, Manuel. That's why California is work on the high-speed rail, which will allow people to live 100 plus miles away, but be within an hour to the main cities. Yeah, I say pay people a living wage and stop charging expensive ass rent. I'm sorry. Like, Bad Cookie says, tweet smearing Cornel West has tripled since he announced he switched to the Greens. Analytics don't lie. Yeah, exactly. But we knew this was coming. I'll get into that story later on. I'll get into it later. We'll get there. Hold on, Bad Cookies. Hold on. We'll get there. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Time for a CBI amendment. 1, to outlaw private equity like BlackRock from owning housing. 2, full-time work, 30-hour, 6-hour days. 3, the creation of a new California government agency called the Cooperative Business Administration that mirrors what the United States Federation of Worker Cooperatives does presently for co-op startups and businesses who wish to transition into a worker-owned enterprise. By providing counseling, tax resources, voice in government, government contracting, consultation to aid in in starting one from scratch, to aid in the conversion process when purchasing from the owner of a corporation, when applying. Right of first refusal laws, education, what co-ops are and the difference between different types of co-ops, training, how to run the different types of co-ops, financing, research the best types of co-ops that most fits which one is trying to do. Those hotel workers would be able to go to the agency and create their own jobs, companies outside of big cities. robbing these big metropolitan cities of their workforce. And as Hillary Clinton said about my Gen X, bring them to heel. Workers leveraging their power, forcing Metro to bring down their prices and up their wage. Sabby, I meant to say on the first message to say CBI for full-time work going from 40 hours a week and 8 hours a day to 30 hours a week to 6 hours per day. My bad. Also, here's the original website I got from Out of Reach Project Report from. Thank you for that. When you get a chance, Eric, can you copy that link? That might be easier for people instead of the Dropbox. Thanks for this as well. Well, when the government fails us, the people take action, and sometimes that action takes a form you don't expect. High schoolers are taking matters into their own hand. Peep this, and if you can, please put in the chat if you can. Why more Americans are skipping college. Yeah, that's another thing. I think I might do a segment on that. Higher education alternatives are starting to increase. More and more people are saying, I'm not going to go to college. And I totally get that.